Hey, what's up guys? It's Marv and welcome back to another Asphalt Legends video. Today we are checking out the Pagani ZONDA CINQUE. This is definitely the most exciting and my personal favorite car for the Legacy of Speed update. Now, you are seeing on screen the process of me going through and unlocking the car through the Drive Syndicate, and that is the first bit that I do want to talk about. Unfortunately, this car is going to be harder to unlock than what I previously expected, and it is purely due to an arbitrary price increase for the packs within the Drive Syndicate. Now, luckily, because I had the Apollo IE and the 600 LT maxed out, and for full disclosure, Gameloft did send me a little bit of Drive Syndicate currency so I could unlock the ZONDA CINQUE. That was how I did it, but the prices were increased to 60,000 Syndicate coins for a 10 times pack. So again, I think if you go ahead and go through all of the money run missions and you have the previous cars at max like I do, there is a pretty good chance you can still at least unlock the car like I did, but starring it up a significant amount is going to be very, very difficult. So I think if I can get by with 2 to 3 stars, I'm still going to be happy because at the end of the day, this is the poster car for Asphalt 6 Adrenaline. It was one of my favorites from that game, and I'm super happy to even have it in my garage. Now, with that being said, let's get into the multiplayer performance. Alright, so for the purposes of testing it in multiplayer, I'm using the max free try that you can currently do in the multiplayer too. So if you do want to test this car and see whether or not it is worth it for you, you can test it out at max in MP2 like I'm doing here. So thankfully, we can get a pretty good gauge at the performance of this car at max. Again, I don't think most people are going to get it at max, but nevertheless, it's still fun and a good idea to check it out. So overall, what I am dubbing this car is the most balanced car in the game, and that's going to be for a couple of reasons. Firstly, let's talk about the stats, because in terms of how this car stacks up to everything else in A class, it's not quite at the king mark of A class. I mean, it's not going to perform as well as something like the Imola, but it's also not hot garbage like some of the very low-end A-class cars like the original LaFerrari. Now at max with the top speed and the nitro upgraded, you can go 240 miles per hour, which again is pretty average for A-class. Some cars go a lot faster, but other cars do go a lot slower. Now, we're going to skip over acceleration because I want to come back to that in a little bit, but handling at 74.76 is actually quite good. Again, the stat itself might not be the highest number out there, but you'll see especially in the Cairo 360 turn, for example, I do keep a pretty significant amount of my speed in those corners. And with handling a lot of the times in this game, it really comes down to how the car actually feels in game rather than the stat that you can see in your garage. And in that sense, I think this car performs a little bit better than what you might expect just based on the stats. Again, it's not going to be a Vanda or something crazy like that, but it's also not a boat. Now let's talk about nitro, because this is the only stat that I would say is significantly above average. Again, nothing like the Vanda or anything like that, but compared to a lot of the other cars in this game where you're usually stuck at like maybe 50, 60 nitro at best, this car is at 73.22 when it's upgraded to max, and you can feel that in game. Now, I do want to tie this a little bit to acceleration because that's the only stat where it's a little bit disappointing. It's just below 80 at 79.84. Now, at max, I don't think that's going to be too much of a problem, but if you're not really upgrading this all of the way, you might be stuck in the mid to high 70s. And that's where this car is going to perform a little bit flatter compared to the other cars where this car isn't necessarily super balanced. Now, what I will say is because I wanted to talk about the nitro and acceleration together, that's where again this car sort of balances itself out, because you have a significantly longer time in shockwave compared to some of the other cars in A class. You can still get up to your top speed even if the acceleration isn't amazing. So really, the downside of this acceleration is at the very beginning of the races where you're not going to keep up with the Vandas for the first 30 seconds. But again, if you know the track well, you can take advantage of the handling of this car. You can pretty easily get your way past them throughout the midpoint of the races. So again, the acceleration is balanced out slightly by the nitro, but I would have preferred to see a little bit better of an acceleration stat, especially on such an iconic car. So you can see throughout this video, I am pretty handedly beating some B-class cars. I think some of them that are featured in the Drive Syndicate are also free to play tries in this multiplayer too, so stuff like the 600 LT Spider as well, and some previously featured cars like the 765 LT, you'll see that I go pretty good toe-to-toe with those cars, and that kind of makes sense, right? Those are pretty higher end B-class cars competing with what I would consider to be a decently mid-range A-class car. So this rank is going to be close to the 918 Spider and the Vanda, so that's where you're going to look at in terms of performance. It may be difficult to use this car to get to Legend League, but I think once this car is circulating in MP1, you can do a pretty decent job getting through Platinum League in this car. Again, the main problem nowadays with this car, I say nowadays like there was something in the past, but anyway, now the problem that I can see with this car is just going to be obtaining it at those higher star counts. Now, obviously, if you bought the Ultimate Pass, you're going to have a much easier job. Unfortunately, I'm not shelling out $50 for this car. That's a little bit too much. If it were an Audi TT, okay then, but because it's the Zonda Cinque and I also already have the car from the Drive Syndicate, I'm not going to put down $50 just for the sake of starring up this car. I'm sure it's going to come back in the near future. It's going to be a very popular car for that, so I'm not super concerned. Again, I just kind of wanted it in my garage for collection's sake. I already have some pretty decent A-class cars anyway, so in terms of just performance, that's not really the main reason why I want this car. I got it for that classic Need for Speed Hot Pursuit orange cover color, and of course the performance is pretty good as well. So I'm just excited to have it in my garage. Currently I do have it only at 1 star. I will update you guys in maybe future videos if I manage to go a little further. That's really all going to depend on the Drive Syndicate. Again, I think I mentioned in that previous video, I'm probably going to end my Drive Syndicate run early just so I can devote all of my coins to just upgrading this car. Alrighty guys, so I know this was a little bit of a shorter video compared to normal, but I really wanted to get this out as quickly as possible just to give you guys a better sense of how this car drives in multiplayer so that you can decide how to spend your currency in the Drive Syndicate. I think it's going to be very different depending on where your garage is. So for example, I had the other previous cars at max. There was no need for me to spend any currency on them. Again, the decision for me is going to be, do I invest a little bit in the Citroen Servault and then leave a little bit for the Zonda Cinque now that I have it unlocked? I think I'm going to put a vast majority into the Cinque. It's going to be the more useful car. Unfortunately, the Servault is just kind of useless all the way down there in the lower tiers of C-Class. That is definitely the poster car type of only for the collection purposes, whereas this car, again, because of its performance, may actually be useful for multiplayer. So if you're also kind of in the same situation as I am, I would devote more of your Drive Syndicate currency towards the Zonda rather than just maxing out the Servault. Anyway guys, let me know your thoughts on the Zonda Cinque in the comment section down below. I'm curious to hear if there are any other poster cars that you would like to see. Obviously the big one is the Murcielago SV. I have no idea how we don't have that car in the game yet. That was, I believe, for Asphalt 5. And I would kind of like the original Veyron to be in the game as well. We have the 16.4 Grand Sport, I believe, but the original Veyron from Asphalt 4 would be neat as well. But anyway guys, I hope you enjoyed the video, and I will see you all later.